So welcome everyone to the 30th episode of the Best Phone
Yeah,
Plans Podcast.
that's right, Dennis. This is our 30th show together. It's been quite a ride. Can't believe we're already on 30 episodes. Like, that's pretty amazing.
So why don't you tell the fans what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so today we're talking about the best fixed wireless plans from the major providers: AT&T wireless internet, T-Mobile home internet, Verizon wireless internet, how those plans compare, which ones are going to be the better options for a work from home setup and situation, and kind of like what you should be looking for work from home, like how much bandwidth video streaming uses, talking on a Zoom call, music streaming, things like that, and then which of these plans can potentially fit your needs. So, Dennis, I think maybe we should start off here with when you're working from home, right? People have got their laptops, have got maybe a desktop setup. They're typically participating in a lot of Zoom calls. Maybe they're listening to some music on Spotify to get into that flow state. How much bandwidth are these different services going to be using? Like, if I'm hopping on a Zoom call with Dennis and we're doing a chat, how much is that going to use?
Roughly like say 5 to 8 megabits per second if it's full HD.
Okay. And then streaming music, that's pretty low, right? What is that around?
Like maybe 1 to 3 megabits per second depending on the quality.
Okay. And I mean, that's what I'm coming up with. Browsing the internet, you don't really need consistent speeds. It's just like how long it takes to load web pages. All right, last scenario. What if you want to kick back, relax, you want to stream a 1080p movie?
Like 7 to 10 megabits per second depending on the compression.
Okay, and then final situation, you want to up the ante, you've got a 4K TV. What's your bandwidth looking like?
20 to 30 megabits per second depending on the frame rate of the and the compression of the video.
Okay, so it sounds like 25 to 30 is our peak. Most tasks going to be 10 meg or under. So that's what we're working with. And maybe we can go from here into like the different options. So we've got different options for Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. Where do you want to start today with these different internet services as they're emerging, trying to help people in potentially more rural parts get connected?
I think we should start with T-Mobile since it's the one that's definitely gotten the most notoriety within the past couple months as it's released.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us more about that? Like what T-Mobile is offering, what the price point is, and what their package is for T-Mobile home internet?
Yeah, so T-Mobile home internet, what they're offering is no data limit, unlimited like data plan. With speeds as low as 25 megabits per second. That's like the amount.
I think that's the baseline. They're like speeds. It's not guaranteed, but it's kind of a general average speeds 25 megabits per second.
Yeah, like that's what you can expect, like quote unquote worst case scenario, basically, if you get it. With peaks as high as 300 to 400 megabits per second, depending on area.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds really good. So, would you be able to use this for the things we discussed, like video, teleconferencing, movies, and music streaming?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, it should definitely be able to satisfy all of those needs. I would say overall. I mean, there has been a few hiccups along the way, as we saw from our good friend Sasha from PC Mag. He did a test recently out in New York, and he was experiencing some latency issues, which did impact his ability to do those Zoom conference calls. But
Yeah, because when you're talking with someone, you need that low latency to try and bring it as close to real time as possible.
more so than anything, you just need the latency to be consistent more than anything.
Got it.
But yeah, I mean that might be a hiccup along the way. But I mean overall, I would say it's a very competitive option. Especially in comparison to like DSL providers that are out there or anything like that, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I think when it comes to a wireless internet or a fixed wireless solution like T-Mobile home internet, the speed is definitely there. I mean, it will vary, as you mentioned, based on location to location, but the speed is typically going to be there for your basic needs for one person. It's no contract, simple pricing, just $50 a month, which is easy. That's less than what I'm paying, which is great. And it's easy self installation. However, some things we noticed from Sasha and other users who have been testing T-Mobile is just how much the speeds will fluctuate. Because when you're connected to an internet service that's using wireless, it depends on how many users there are connected. It depends on network congestion And all of a sudden, if you're using your internet between peak hours of, let's say, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., you could see a little dip in performance. Maybe your video takes longer to load or buffer. Maybe video calling doesn't work as well and things like that. So it's definitely not that sweet wired fiber or coaxial that you're used to over at your place, Dennis.
Most definitely not. But, I would say this product is definitely more geared to those that don't have access to that sweet fiber or even a cable provider, or if they do have a cable provider, maybe they have a situation that was similar to our good friend Sneed, where they're just not able to get good service from their cable provider,
What do you think the cutoff point would be? Like, what's you can get wired connection for X amount, go that, but if it's over a certain price, you should consider T-Mobile.
So I think where T-Mobile fits in is for anybody, if it's for any provider that offers 100 megabits per second or less, right?
Okay.
If anybody needs anything faster than that because maybe they have a household that's full of four people, maybe they're all working from home, or maybe they have gamers in that. Well, maybe they have people that maybe they have people that are streaming in the house, I should say, or just other activities going on. It's just a busy house. Then you should look at your cable operator or whoever can offer faster than the 100 megabit threshold that we just set for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Even gamers, because latency is important,
Right. Yeah, and T-Mobile's going to have that variance and variability.
Right. So, and then as far as like a price cutoff, I would say,
I mean, this is kind of subjective, but I was just curious to get your thoughts and opinions here.
yeah, I mean, it's about quality too, right? Like I would rather, like, if Fios came out one day and said, Dennis, our cheapest option is $100, right? And you only got like 200 by 200 for that, right? Or I could have T-Mobile's home internet for $50. I would still pick to have Fios' fiber for $100 because it's symmetrical speed. It's fiber. It's the gold standard. You know what I mean? That's my opinion. That's my personal opinion. Now, for the everyday consumer, I feel like $75. If it's more than $75,
like, consider T-Mobile. I mean, give them a try, right? There's no equipment costs. It's easy to just pick up the modem, set it up for a month, and see what it's like. And if it works, great. Maybe you could save money on your internet bill. And if not, then you're paying a little bit more, but you're getting a more consistent, reliable experience.
Right. You're getting a guaranteed speed. There's not going to be really any fluctuation in that, which is the important thing,
Absolutely. Okay, I think last thing for T-Mobile before we may consider moving on, hardware. What are we looking at for hardware? What is the T-Mobile home internet running off of, and how is that?
So that's the weakest link in their product right now, is the router that they're providing to the consumer. It's lacking so many features that your normal router that you buy off the shelf from Best Buy has.
What are we missing out on?
Well, as someone that hasn't used the product myself, it's hard for me to know all the specific things, but like
Sure.
I know one thing, for example, is like you can't put it into bridge mode. Like,
Okay.
you have to use the router that they provide. Like, you can't really use your own custom router like you could with other providers, right? I know for a fact that when the thing loses power, it forgets all of its settings that you had set up. That was
No.
Well, that was something our good friend Austin that we had on Total
Yeah,
Smile.
yeah.
And then others have talked about the features that are lacking too. Limited options when it comes to port forwarding, for example, or QoS settings, or just other things like. It's just not that's the weakest thing in their product. Basically, is the actual router that they're providing to the customer. Like, honestly, I feel like if they were using something else, maybe something more closer in line and like with what Verizon's doing, they would probably have a much better product. Like, I think the service overall would probably be so much better.
I think you're right, Dennis. Yeah, that's definitely curious. And I know we talked about this. I think it was actually just in the Patreon exclusive live stream we did. Like, when do we see T-Mobile potentially introducing a new fixed wireless router or a product to serve that? And I think you were saying in like 2 years, and I kind of agree. Like, they have something that works, even if it's not great. And I think that's all they need right now.
You know what I would love to see, and this would really take it up a notch, is if T-Mobile let customers actually bring over their own equipment. So, like, if I wanted to buy like a Nighthawk like router that uses like a SIM card, right?
Right.
And they let me use that on there, and that would really separate them and differentiate them from the competition.
It would really add to the experience. So that's T-Mobile home internet, $50 a month, unlimited data. I think it's 4K streaming. Is that right?
Well, it's $50 a month for now, but they're going to be putting it back up to 60.
Yeah. So 50 for now, 60 in the future. That leaves Verizon and AT&T as the next kind of two options here. Where do you want to go, Dennis?
I'd say let's do AT&T.
AT&T. AT&T, I think, is the weakest one here. They haven't been promoting their solution that much, in my opinion. I didn't even know about it until a couple weeks ago, to be honest. Their option is what they call AT&T wireless internet, and you actually have to purchase what's called an AT&T wireless internet device, and this is on a lease. It's $5.56 a month, and I think it's a couple $100 is the actual cost of the unit. Plans, okay, T-Mobile unlimited data, AT&T you are limited. There are limits here. It's 50 gigs for $60, so already more expensive than T-Mobile and significantly less data, or 100 gigs for $100 per month. And overages are $25 per 10 gigs. Yeah, is there even much to talk about here, Dennis? Like, what do you want to discuss for AT&T?
I think it's the fact that they don't have a good option, and that's the truth, Now, I think it's also worth mentioning, even though it's a little bit outside the scope of things, is that there are, MVNO providers that do offer or allow for you to use AT&T services as home-based internet. Specifically, I think you know who I'm going to refer to, our good friend Carlos.
Yeah.
Los Mobile.
What's going on with Los Mobile? What's their plan right now?
Well, basically, they allow you to have truly unlimited data, and they allow you to use that SIM card in a phone, a tablet, or even like a hotspot-like device, like a Nighthawk router type of deal.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what the pricing is if you use it in a Nighthawk router, but
I actually have it up right now. So to clarify, you do need to specify what service you are signing up for, and you can choose phone, tablet, or a hotspot jetpack device. You're not allowed to switch the SIM card between devices, as they need to make sure they know exactly what device the SIM card is going to be used in. But their truly unlimited hotspot plan that can be used in a hotspot device like a Netgear Nighthawk is going for just $80 per month. Unlimited data on the AT&T network.
Which I know that's like $30 more expensive than what T-Mobile's offering, but I'll just say this. AT&T has a much stronger presence when it comes to their network and more of the rural areas that matter. And I think with more certainty, even though there's not like a set guaranteed speed, I think you can definitely expect to at least get 25 meg, if not better, with AT&T.
I agree with that, Dennis. And, as with all coverage, it does vary, but I think AT&T's coverage footprint is so much stronger than T-Mobile's, especially on LTE, that I think this device paired with a router like the Netgear Nighthawk is going to be a really good, this is the viable option. AT&T themselves, garbage solutions, terrible plans. Their prepaid plan is actually better. I'll give a shout out to that. It's $55 for 100 gigs. So literally half the price of the AT&T wireless internet option, and works in the Nighthawk.
I'll tell you something that makes this more unique than the other two options. There's no geo restriction. You can use this hotspot anywhere. You want to go in an RV, travel across the country, you got yourself internet on the go. T-Mobile, you're locked down to your home basically, or to that cell site at least.
They're checking that address. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dennis. I think Los Mobile, fantastic, probably the best, straight up. Like, there is no other option. It's the best option on the AT&T network, and I would say AT&T prepaid could be a decent second option if you wanted something a little bit more affordable.
I mean, I know this is going to sound odd from me saying this, considering I just blown through 2 terabytes this month, but I think you could live with 100 gigabytes of data.
Yeah, so do you think, would that be enough for Zoom calls and conferencing? What kind of usage habits would need to be changed in order to fit within that 100 gig limit that prepaid's offering?
Yeah, so straight up, first and foremost, you definitely couldn't do any video streaming, period. No casual Netflix watching on the side. You would have to basically just use this for your work. But if you're trying to get it, if you just have to have something because pandemic life, you know what I mean? You just need it for school and for working from home. I think you can get away with 100 gigs because most of your working from home related stuff, right? You're browsing the web, you're checking emails, maybe you have to VPN or something like that. But none of it as a whole is going to be blowing through data, right? Your big data hogs are video streaming and possibly downloading large files for games or what have you. but I think you could get away with 100 gigs. It wouldn't be comfortable by any stretch. Like, it would be rough, but I think you could do it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, my biggest use is probably YouTube for video on my home internet. So I think if you just cut out YouTube and video streaming, or you drop it down to like 240p or something, or do audio only, you think that would even burn through it?
No, I meant if you're doing 240p, it ain't even worth it. Oh no, like don't like if you're gonna do anything to try to conserve 480p, but even then, I don't. I will
say, here's kind of a complimentary plan to go with this. If you have a smartphone, that will typically have unlimited data, and you can use that for streaming all your video content, and then you can use your mobile hotspot for working on your computer, where you're getting more stuff done. And so yeah, your phone can kind of be for video, and then your computer on the hotspot for more work-related tasks.
That would most definitely be the move, and then you could probably. You wouldn't be able to screen share it to a TV. Which,
I mean, you could plug it in, like you could hardwire it in using like an adapter, and that would probably be the move. But yeah, it's not ideal, and this is kind of in a pinch situation either way.
I mean, look, let's put it this way: if it's between your kid failing type of deal, and you absolutely you need some internet, you just have to have it, then this is a good solution in a pinch. And there's technically nothing stopping you from having multiple hotspots too. I mean, you could double down.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
Do two of them. At least they're $50 a piece, right?
55. Yep.
55. So two of them, that's 110. That's a little pricey, but 200 gigs. Yeah, you could allocate 100 for your work from home, 100 for your free time and pleasure.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Dennis, you talked a little bit about speeds on the AT&T network. I've seen really good speeds in my area. What do you think ping and latency is going to be like, and overall consistency in comparison to T-Mobile, which seem to have a lot of variance in their performance?
Well, I got to test out Los Mobile, so I got to actually see what a limited hotspot looks like on AT&T, and it was pretty consistent. As far as speeds, I'll put it this way: I never dropped below 100 meg.
Oh wow! So you were fine, the whole time, no issues.
Yeah, there was no point where I dropped below 100 meg during the nighttime. I saw better peaks during the nighttime. And by better peaks, I mean I saw speeds spike as high as 500 and uploads hovering around 60 to 80 megabits per second, which is pretty insane. And on the lowest end of the spectrum, I saw downloads of 100 meg and uploads of 10, which, to be clear here, this is still fantastic. This is what cable operators offer 100 by 10, right? It's pretty.
Yeah, that's, easily great. And for the price, Los Mobile, it's more expensive than T-Mobile, but I think you're getting that more premium network experience on AT&T. Or it could be the difference of having coverage on AT&T and just straight up not having coverage at all because T-Mobile's not there.
Yeah, and then as far as pings are concerned, obviously the ping times aren't as good as a fiber connection, right? But that's not what we're trying to compare here. But I would say latency was acceptable. I actually did try gaming on it. It wasn't the experience I was necessarily accustomed to, but it also wasn't unplayable either.
Sure. You didn't skyrocket to the number one position in the leaderboards, but you were still having fun.
Yeah, you could have a good time on it. You could still have a good time on it. You could game on it. Definitely can watch YouTube on it. I had no problems watching any type of video. We never did the whole idea of doing the podcast on the
Yeah.
So I don't know how the podcast would go, but I would imagine it would have been fine. And I didn't use it to rely on my work because, I had work.
Yeah, work. Work needs to be done for Dennis. That can't be tested with. So
yeah. So I had a good experience with it. Legit. I'll put it to you this way: if I was back in my rural small town and no cable option existed, then I would probably be relying on Los Mobile. That would be my move.
I like it. I think the final thing to mention here is you actually will have to purchase your own hardware. So as we mentioned, AT&T fixed wireless, don't get it, but you would have to purchase that specific AT&T fixed wireless internet device. For Los Mobile or AT&T prepaid, you're going to be wanting to pick up a router of some kind that takes a SIM card, and you're likely going to be looking at the Netgear Nighthawk M1, and I think that's around $250 new. They have a new 5G one that I think is $510. So it's a little bit more of this upfront cost, but you can use that on different networks as well, and it's going to be unlocked.
And I just want to say, real quick, No need to waste the money on a 5G Nighthawk when it comes to AT&T's network. No need at all.
Yeah, you're right. Their 5G is kind of a joke right now unless you're on 5G Plus, and LTE is actually really fast on AT&T.
Now, the only thing I will just say is 5G did make a difference on my upload. And a pretty noticeable difference too, about 20 megabits per second. That's the one area where the 5G did make.
Yeah, but it's not going to be worth double the price of.
No, it's not worth double the price on a dedicated device. I'm just mentioning.
Yeah,
I just want to mention that like the 5G does do something, but it's not like you're gonna have a fine time on LTE is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. So that's AT&T. Let's talk about Verizon then, and they actually offer two separate solutions. They offer an LTE plan and a 5G plan. Where should we start? Should we do LTE and then bump things up to 5G?
Yeah, let's start with LTE. It's definitely the not so exciting version of Verizon's plan because if I remember correctly, don't they have a 1080p video cap?
It might. I'll see if I can find that as we're talking about it. But what you need to know. Oh, yep. It says HD streaming, and I think that's actually what we stumbled across last time. Is that it just says HD streaming, like it doesn't say up to 4K. So I don't know if it's capped or if they're just like putting that buffer in just in case. Typical download speeds are again at that 25 megabit per second mark, which is what T-Mobile was averaging. And they actually cap. This is what's interesting. Verizon caps the LTE speeds at a max of 50 megabits per second. And upload speeds are typically around 4 megabits per second. How do you feel like Verizon's LTE offering is comparing in terms of speed against T-Mobile and AT&T?
I think T-Mobile's definitely doing better in terms of speed because if it's available, you'll get more. I think 25 to 50 range is perfectly acceptable for most households that this is geared toward. I think the upload speed is going to be the biggest weakness in the product. I mean, you can get by with 4 megabits per second. It's better than some DSL connections out there, and it's sort of in line with low-end cable offerings. And it's not going to stop you from being able to work from home. Like, you can still get away just fine with that. But I think that's the biggest weakness. As far as reliability goes, though, I would say Verizon has a more reliable product than T-Mobile. Their router that they actually ship out is quite good as far as the equipment's concerned.
Wow. Yeah. Do you know what it's specifically called? I was trying to look it up and I was having trouble, so no worries if not. But it looks like...
I don't remember the model number, but I know it looks like a printer on Snead's does
All right, well, Snead has the 5G one, right? Or does he have LTE?
I think he's connecting LTE at his house because he doesn't have 5G yet.
Interesting. But he might have gotten the 5G one because he has 5G in some other location. But either way, yeah, there's no equipment charge with Verizon, too. I think that's important to mention. You kind of lease it, so to speak. And actually, yeah, here's an image. Yeah, you're right, Dennis. It's like a little box, like a small printer. And baby tiny printer. You lease it, and you actually get credit applied to your account. And there's a discount. So if you're a Verizon wireless customer, you have a line on them. I think it's play more, get more, or do more. Price for LTE internet is just $40 a month. And if you're not a Verizon wireless customer, it's $60 a month. So overall, I think really competitive pricing from Verizon.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately it's going to come down to who has better coverage in your market, right? Or if it's even available in your zip code. I know I was kind of bad-mouthing the T-Mobile router as a whole, but I do think T-Mobile has a better offering in comparison to Verizon's LTE offering, just because there is the potential to get faster speed.
Yeah, like in my apartment, I just signed up for T-Mobile's free trial plan. I hit over 500 megabits per second down because I'm in a market that has N41. And with Verizon, even if I was in a location that could hit over 100, 200 megabits per second down on LTE, they would still cap my speeds at 50 megabits per second. I think that's a little disappointing. Right,
exactly. And, it is worth bearing in mind that if you are on T-Mobile's 5G, the latency is not bad. I believe with Sasha, when he was doing his testing, he was seeing ping times as low as like 20 milliseconds.
Yeah, I think 10 to 20. So, yeah, it really depends. I mean, it's almost hard to talk about wireless because it is so location dependent. I think overall, from what we've talked about, I think I would put T-Mobile as number one just because of the potential it has for the speeds and performance. I would probably put AT&T in number two, and it just depends on your limit. I mean, Los Mobile would probably be number one, and then T-Mobile, just depending. And I think Verizon LTE is probably bottom for me just because of the speed cap this plan has.
Yeah, and just to say my ranking, lowest mobile number 1, T-Mobile 2, Verizon 3rd, and then AT&T has a non-existent offering, so 4th.
Yeah, okay. I agree with that. Dennis, I think that's pretty much what people need to know for LTE. Verizon has a second plan. I think it's way more exciting. It's Verizon's LTE home internet offering. What's
No,
going on
5G.
there? Excuse me. Wow. It's Verizon's 5G home internet offering. What's going on there?
So yeah, this product is actually exciting and is real competition to actual like cable ISPs. It uses Verizon's branded ultra wideband or their millimeter wave technology, and you're able to see crazy speeds. Well, I'm talking gigabit, 2 gigabit speeds on the download, and speeds from like 50 to 100 meg on the upload. Really good stuff. And the latency is definitely like low double digits, like ping times, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
And unlike the LTE product, they actually give you true unlimited. You get to stream 4K, do what you want, do as you please. It is definitely where it's at, where available. And from a pricing standpoint, it's only like $10 more than their LTE.
Yeah, so it's actually, again, Verizon Wireless customers get a discount, comes in at $50 a month. If you're not a customer, it says it was $70, but now it's $65 a month, and that's with auto pay and paper-free billing. So $5 more than what I guess T-Mobile. It's very competitive, I guess, is the bottom line here. Like $50 or $65, that's really, really good. And for comparison, when we were talking about Verizon LTE, average speeds, quoted speeds were 25 megabits per second. Average speeds for Verizon 5G, 300 megabits per second.
And you can definitely see faster than that.
Oh, yeah. That's just like their kind of safety average. Like, we want to put something in there that's people can expect to get. And then when their expectations are exceeded, they'll feel good about that.
And it's also worth mentioning, if you have 300 megabits per second, anything faster than that, there's a point of diminishing returns. Like,
That's
300
true.
meg is a pretty good sweet spot to be at.
How many people do you think this Verizon 5G device can support? Like, we talked about T-Mobile maybe being good for 1 or 2 people depending on speeds and performance. AT&T is probably, again, like that 1 to 2 person mark. What do you think Verizon's looking at for their 5G device?
Like 10 to 15 people.
You can have your whole family. You can have your neighbors on.
Dude, I mean, 300 megs a lot of bandwidth. It's really hard. I mean, okay, let's make, even if we made the worst case scenario assumption that everybody's streaming 4K, so we did 300 divided by 25, right?
Yep.
That's still 12 people. And that would be,
Streaming for their favorite 4K movies.
yeah, they would all have to be streaming like HDR, 4K, like HBO Max quality, like Dolby Atmos content to even come close to the concept of saturating that connection at 300 meg. Let alone the faster speeds, like I said, you could probably expect if you're connecting ultra wideband. It is blazing. Okay, you're gonna be good. There's no scenario where you're using more than like 300 megabits per second for a normal family household needs.
Yeah, wow. So it's going to meet and exceed your work from home requirements, be a really great experience. And I'll mention no equipment costs here as well. So far, AT&T prepaid and Lotus Mobile are the only ones with equipment costs. Verizon and T-Mobile are waiving those or applying some sort of credit, so there's no cost to that. So you can get set up for a pretty affordable price.
So Stetson, we clearly talked about, a lot of these options, but I think what's also important to talk about is for the people that are in these rural areas where your bandwidth is limited. You're trying to squeeze around with 25 megabits per second. Maybe we should talk about some pro tips to make the most use out of that capacity.
I absolutely love that idea, Dennis. Let's dive into it. And we should also kind of round off this discussion with our overall top picks.
Sure.
So do you want to do top picks and then some tips and tricks, or?
Yeah, let's
all right.
do that. Let's do
Top
that.
picks. So this is like the best fixed wireless plans. What's your number one?
So despite all the praise I gave millimeter wave, my number one is still going to be Los Mobile. And the reason for that is because unlike any of the other options we talked about, you can actually move around and use this anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere there's AT&T coverage, basically. You're not geo-locked.
Right. T-Mobile is constrained to your address. That's a really good number one pick. I think for a slightly different take, I would probably go. I mean, I guess I'm torn. Like Verizon LTE, I don't like because of the speed cap. I mean, I've got to go ultra wideband. I think if you have it, that's the number one option that's available right now of the plans. It's the fastest speeds, the best performance, and it's at an affordable price.
I that was a very close one for me too. It's neck and neck with Los Mobile. Only reason I didn't mention it or didn't pick it is just because realistically speaking, ultra wideband is limited. It's very limited in its accessibility, and it's definitely not going to be in the rural markets that need it most.
It's almost like if you are in an area with ultra wideband, odds are you probably have access to a wired fiber connection
or cable.
Like, so you shouldn't even need it. So it's almost, I mean, I'm almost negating my top pick right from the start. Maybe like focusing on rural. All right, Dennis, what's your number 2 pick?
Number 2 pick would be the Verizon LT product. And the reason for that is because the equipment itself is far more reliable than the equipment that T-Mobile is currently providing. And you can have more certainty, even though there's some restrictions, like they're capping out at 50 megabits per second, at least you have a set expectation. Like, it's better to have a consistent 25 megabit per second connection than maybe like a T-Mobile product where one moment it's 100 meg and another moment it's 25, right? You can't really set up like QS things around that, right? Because you can't really figure out what time of day you're going to have X, Y, and Z.
I like that. I think it may depend on the congestion of the Verizon network in your area. I think I might just go T-Mobile as my number 2 pick because the potential for getting really fast speeds is there. I think they have a pretty good system with getting the account set up and the easy activation. But you're right, the hardware is a little disappointing. So I don't know. I hate to say like it depends, but I think that's kind of like the bottom line here. It depends. I would say check coverage in your area. Probably Los Mobile might be like number 1 if you're willing to pay up front for that Netgear Nighthawk or other equipment. And if you want to get something that's more affordable, maybe just go with Verizon. Like their network blankets, the US can support one person, maybe a couple people depending on bandwidth.
I mean, I like your it depends situation because T-Mobile's and Verizon's LT product are very close. Like they literally can go tit for tat. It really just depends on who has the better coverage. You know?
Yeah. Like in my apartment, T-Mobile all the way. Verizon would be terrible here. I'm sure in someone else's apartment or many other people's living situations, you'd be wanting to go with Verizon.
And if for some godforsaken reason you don't want to get Los Mobile, then your last option should be like the AT&T prepaid plan.
Yeah. And I actually think that's good for traveling. If you're doing business trips, you don't want to rely on hotel Wi-Fi. I think then
Los Mobile is good for traveling.
I mean, if something happened, you didn't want to do Los, you wanted to do prepaid.
Oh yeah, gotcha.
Just like as the alternative, I think that'd be fine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the truth is with prepaid, AT&T prepaid, 100 gigs isn't really gonna replace a true proper home internet connection. You can squeak by.
I mean, I don't know if you knew this or not, but I believe AT&T DSL customers actually have a 350 gigabyte cap, which is not that.
That's crazy. Well, yeah, maybe, Dennis, we can dive in then to some tips and tricks for... We talked about already reducing data usage, but you had other tips and tricks that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, so I want to talk about like what you can do to make a 25 megabit per second connection work for more people.
Okay.
First, this is going to sound super stupid and simple, but if you're someone that likes to stream a lot of content, I recommend downgrading your quality to 1080p or even 720p. It uses significantly less data than 4K does, and it's really not going to be that noticeable of a difference, realistically speaking.
Yeah, aren't like TVs upscaling the content they're getting anyways? Like you could stream 1080p input to the TV, and it'll just upscale it for you?
Correct.
So yeah, you're probably not going to notice too much of a difference, but you will notice that savings in data usage and consumption.
Yep. Another pro tip, and this is for a little bit of my nerdier friends out there, but you could go into your router's settings and enable something called QoS, and basically you can sort of divvy up the pie on which stuff gets the priority. Like if the network's congested, basically which device gets priority. So you could set your work computer up so that it has the highest priority on your local network. And you can make it so that it has a guaranteed, say, 5 megabit per second connection. Just allocate it to it when it's on and doing its thing. That way you don't experience any interruptions during your Zoom conference calls, even in the most intense situations on the networks.
Awesome. So if you do that and you're going into work and your kids start streaming something in 4K, your kid or whoever's streaming will actually notice that buffering and that drop performance because of the QoS. Your laptop is getting that guaranteed set performance.
Correct. So yeah, I mean the quote unquote drawback to that is yes, the person that's trying to stream would notice buffering, but that's not so bad because, while it's buffering, they could pause it and go use the bathroom, grab some chips, whatever. But if you're in the middle of a Zoom conference meeting, the last thing you want is to have that audio,
Right,
you know what I
right.
mean?
Like you're in the middle of a job interview. This is really important to you. All of a sudden your connection drops. Like you do not want that.
Yeah, so that's my second pro tip to make it so that limited bandwidth goes that little extra mile for you. Another thing you could technically do, and this is something we really haven't talked about, is there's devices out there where you could combine multiple connections to get more bandwidth for yourself. So, if you're Mr. Moneybags, maybe you have Verizon and T-Mobile's wireless home product, and you get yourself a separate device to combine that bandwidth and then divvy it out.
Wow. So it sounds to me like you would get each one, set it up, have a wired connection from the provided routers or modems that Verizon, AT&T are giving you into a third box, your custom box that you're buying from another third party that is aggregating those connections and then creating its own wireless connection with the aggregate of those speeds and performance.
Correct. That is also something
That is awesome. I had no idea you could do that. My mind is blown. Excellent idea.
Yeah, and if you don't want to get a third aggregate box, you could also do it with getting like a PC that has 2 NICs. And there's software that's out there where you can combine that. There's also like a VPN provider that does it, but I don't like that setup. I prefer the hardware-based solution personally.
Sweet.
But yeah, that's a way to get more bandwidth if there is no good provider at all, period. That's not a bad idea at all. And then lastly, so we talked about reducing video quality to a certain extent to keep both your data usage down if you have a cap and also just to use less bandwidth. We talked about QoS. And we talked about the idea of combining multiple connections. But lastly, in a limited bandwidth household, you could, and I know this is going to sound cheesy, always just set some guide rules that basically just say, like, no streaming from X o'clock to Y o'clock. You know what I mean? So if it's during the workday, just be like, guys, use your phone. Use your phone to watch YouTube, right? Use your phone.
Yeah.
Don't use this connection. This is for, school and stuff during these hours. And I know that's really crazy to say in the 21st century, but, sometimes you got to do what you got to do if there's not a good internet provider option out there, I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to give you, just to really drive it home, because people probably don't realize this considering I've been blessed with fiber, I used to live off of a 1.5 megabit per second connection.
Wow. That's that's slow.
Yeah. I did it. I did it there for a little over a year. It wasn't great. I mean, this was back when it wasn't the worst thing in the world. This was like 2002-ish, 3.
Okay.
But I did it. Like, it's not great. You can definitely load up a web page or something. You can load 40p YouTube, roughly.
Yeah, and I'll add that I think as internet speeds have gotten a little bit faster and a little bit faster and a little bit faster over time, I think the amount of ads and additional bloatware that is loaded with web pages has also increased. Mm-hmm. So now in today's world, trying to load a page on 1.5 megabits per second feels even slower than it would have back then.
That and that we have relative perspective too, right? Like, we know what good internet feels like, so it's more noticeable. But technically speaking, I mean, that's the video throttle that standard. When MVNO's cap video at 40p, it's 1.5 meg. So you could get away with it, and we're talking about having 25 to share, which, that is the FCC's definition of broadband. It's obviously not what Stetson and I consider ideal, but if you can manage to eke that out, you should be fine. And 50 meg is definitely going to be usable for your family.
Sweet. Dennis, I think that was a great discussion and overview on fixed wireless solutions and the best plans. And I loved your pro tips at the end there, clearly demonstrating your wealth of knowledge on internet. And I think people are really going to appreciate that. Anything else you want to mention in this show and talk about related to fixed wireless or anything else?
The only thing that I want to bring up is we didn't really talk about like doesn't yeah, T-Mobile has a hotspot plan, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, they do. They have prepaid plans that are data only that can be used in hotspots. And I don't think they have a postpaid hotspot plan. I think it's only tablets. They have prepaid data plans that you can use.
But wasn't it like 100 gigs for $50, right?
Yep, that's correct. 100 gigs. I think it actually increased the last time I looked at it. It might actually be 60 now.
Well, what I wanted to say was, remember how we were talking about the worst thing about the T-Mobile Home product is the equipment they provide? If you go the prepaid route and get that, I'm pretty sure you can use your own like Nighthawk router.
Yep.
And yeah, you're going to be stuck with the 100 gigs, but if N41's really good and you're using your own equipment, that could also potentially be a decent option, and it gives you the mobility of like something like Lowe's Mobile. That's
a really great point, Dennis. And I will clarify, it is $50 a month. Maybe it's back to that. I know the price has changed. I have it on video, but it's 100. It's 100 gigs for $50, and T-Mobile is offering it or advertising it, I should say, with their 5G in-Go hotspot. But as Dennis mentioned, you can purchase your own equipment. Maybe it's a Netgear Nighthawk or what have you, and use that plan in that.
So it's not a bad way to both A, test out the T-Mobile network, but B, to be able to use your own stuff. That's something that's important to you.
Yep,
and it might be an also decent option to explore in the event that maybe T-Mobile doesn't have your zip code open up yet for their home internet. Because remember, for these home internet solutions from T-Mobile and Verizon, you have to actually punch in your zip code.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a good way to get around that and make it more widely available to yourself as well.
I think one more possible option that I just thought of is actually getting a tablet plan. Typically, carriers are offering some form of unlimited tablet plan. And you can get a cellular tablet like the iPad Pro, for example, that's got really good power and performance that you can use on a cellular plan with unlimited data to get all of your work done and not have to worry about data caps or limits or anything like that. And typically when you use a VPN, you can bypass any video streaming limits. So if the plan is by default limited to 480p, a VPN will typically hide your network traffic and bypass that speed cap.
Hey, I had one other thought. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, we were ready to wrap it up and our brains started fireworking ideas.
Yeah, I had one other thought. Remember when US Mobile came out with the shared bucket plans?
Yeah.
Do you know if US Mobile supports other devices that aren't necessarily phones?
My understanding right now is currently phones and tablets are the only devices US Mobile supports.
Okay, I was going to say, because my thought was their price per gigabyte wasn't
terrible. It was like $2 a gig. So if you wanted to, you could load up on that. And I think we just got to wait for them to support hotspot devices. I think when you're an MVNO, hotspot users typically consume more data or all of the data that they're paying for. And I think as an MVNO, those agreements can be more challenging where they're paying per gig that their customers are using, and they need to make sure things are profitable and things work for them. So that's why most MVNOs don't offer dedicated hotspot plans, but something to keep your eyes out in the future.
All right, well, I'm happy with this little pre-recording that we did. Guys, if you watch this was a pre-recorded show. Stetson's going to be having an awesome time with his family back home. I hope y'all did enjoy this episode of the podcast as always, and if you're not a member already, I definitely recommend that you become a member of the Patreon, because today as we record this show, we actually just did our extra special episode with our Patreon supporters. So definitely want to see more people coming aboard when we do that, because it's a lot of fun getting to interact with you guys behind the scenes, and there's a lot of other extra content in the works. Plus, for people that always come into the live chat, I want to see more people being upgraded to 3G and LTE with the badges by their name. So become a member of the Patreon if you're not already, and don't forget to hit that like button. You guys have an awesome rest of your week, and a happy 4th of July if I don't talk to you by then.
Wonderful conclusion. That's it for this episode. I'm Stetson.
And I'm Dennis.
And we look forward to talking to you in the next one. Peace, guys.
Peace.